The movie begins in a dystopian future where the United Kingdom is under the oppressive control of a totalitarian regime. The story of V for Vendetta unfolds. The Norse Fire Party, led by the tyrannical High Chancellor Adam Sutler, governs with an iron fist, using fear, propaganda, and brutal enforcement to maintain its hold on power. Surveillance is omnipresent, civil liberties have been eroded, and dissent is ruthlessly crushed. The film opens with a voiceover from the enigmatic and masked protagonist, V. He speaks of the gunpowder plot of 1605, where Guy Fawkes attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament in London. Vi invokes Fawkes as a symbol of resistance against tyranny, framing the historical event as a prelude to the story that is about to unfold. We are then introduced to the grim, controlled world in which the citizens of the United Kingdom live. The government, through its propaganda machine, the British television network, BTN, manipulates public perception and stifles any opposition. This bleak setting is where we meet Evie Hammond, a young woman who works at the BTN, trying to live an unremarkable life under the oppressive regime. One night, as Evie prepares to leave her apartment after curfew, she is confronted by a group of secret police officers known as Fingermen. They attempt to assault her, but she is saved by a mysterious figure dressed in black and wearing a Guy Fawkes mask, V. After swiftly dispatching the Fingermen, V introduces himself to Evie and takes her on an unexpected journey. V leads Evie to a rooftop, where he urges her to watch the city skyline. As the clock strikes midnight, a series of explosions erupt, and the Old Bailey, a symbol of the British legal system, is destroyed. The destruction is accompanied by the rousing 1812 overture by Tchaikovsky, which V has synchronized with the explosions. This act of rebellion is V's declaration of war against the oppressive regime. The next day, the government scrambles to control the narrative. High Chancellor Sutler addresses the nation, condemning the destruction as a terrorist attack. However, V soon hijacks the BTN broadcast, delivering a powerful speech directly to the people. He explains his motives, condemns the government's tyranny, and invites the citizens to rise up against their oppressors. V promises to destroy the Houses of Parliament 1 year from that day, on November 5th, if the government has not been brought to justice. As the story progresses, Evie becomes more entangled in V's mission. She learns of his tragic past, including his imprisonment at Larkhill, a government facility where he was subjected to horrific experiments. Larkhill was a place of unspeakable cruelty, where political prisoners and other undesirables were used as test subjects. V was one of the few survivors, and his experiences there ignited his vendetta against the regime responsible for such atrocities. Evie, initially terrified and reluctant, begins to understand the depth of the government's evil and the reasons behind V's crusade. She finds herself conflicted, torn between her fear of the government and her growing sympathy for V's cause. Her journey of self-discovery and transformation begins when she seeks refuge with Gordon Dietrich, a television personality who secretly opposes the government. Gordon's home provides Evie with temporary safety, but this is short-lived. Gordon is targeted by the government for his subversive activities, and Evie is captured by the secret police. She is imprisoned and subjected to intense psychological torture, with her captors demanding information about V. Despite the torture, Evie refuses to betray him. While in captivity, Evie discovers a letter hidden in her cell, written by a former prisoner named Valerie. Valerie's letter recounts her life story, her love for another woman, and her eventual persecution by the government. Valerie's story profoundly affects Evie, giving her the strength to endure her imprisonment and solidifying her resolve to stand against the regime. Eventually, Evie is released, only to discover that her imprisonment was orchestrated by V himself. He reveals that he subjected her to this ordeal to free her from her fears. Initially shocked and angered, Evie comes to understand V's intent. He wanted her to be free from the paralyzing fear that the regime instills in its citizens. This revelation marks a turning point in Evie's character as she emerges stronger, more determined, and ready to embrace the fight for freedom. Meanwhile, V continues his methodical campaign against the government, targeting key figures within the Norse Fire Party who were involved in the atrocities at Larkhill. Among them are Lewis Prothero, the propagandist known as the Voice of London, and Bishop Anthony Lilliman, a corrupt clergyman. V's actions are not merely about vengeance, they are part of a larger plan to expose the government's crimes and ignite a revolution among the people. As V systematically eliminates these figures, he also uncovers the truth behind the government's rise to power. He reveals how the Norse Fire Party manipulated the public's fear of terrorism and disease to seize control, using a bioweapon developed at Larkhill to create the very crises they promised to solve. V's revelations further erode the public's trust in the government, and small acts of defiance begin to spread among the citizens. The government, in response, tightens its grip on power, increasing surveillance and cracking down on dissent with even more brutality. High Chancellor Sutler becomes increasingly paranoid as he realizes that V's actions are undermining the regime's authority. The tension between the government and the people continues to rise, with the public growing more disillusioned and restless. Throughout the film, the relationship between Eve and V deepens. V, a man of mystery and contradictions, represents both a force for justice and a harbinger of chaos. Eve, who starts as a fearful citizen, becomes more involved in V's mission, even as she questions his methods. Their interactions reveal the personal cost of resistance and the sacrifices required in the fight against tyranny. As Evie becomes more entwined with V's cause, she also begins to see him not just as a symbol, but as a person with his own vulnerabilities and emotions. V's affection for Evie becomes apparent, and their relationship adds an emotional depth to the narrative, highlighting the human aspect of the struggle for freedom. The government's desperation continues to grow as V's influence spreads. High Chancellor Sutler and his enforcer, Creedy, resort to increasingly harsh measures to maintain control. The regime's efforts to portray V as a dangerous terrorist fail to resonate with a public that has begun to see through the lies and manipulation that have kept them subjugated. The media, controlled by the government, plays a crucial role in shaping public perception. However, V's ability to hijack the airwaves and speak directly to the people disrupts the government's narrative. His message of resistance and the power of the people begins to take hold as more citizens start to question the legitimacy of the regime. One of the film's central themes is the power of symbols and ideas. V himself becomes a symbol of defiance, with his Guy Fawkes mask representing the spirit of rebellion. He understands that while individuals can be silenced, ideas cannot be easily destroyed. V's actions are not just about toppling the government, but about awakening the people to their own power and inspiring them to take control of their future. As V's message spreads, the people of London begin to resist in small but significant ways. The government's propaganda and fear tactics are no longer enough to keep the populace in line. The seeds of rebellion have been sown, and the people are beginning to find their voice. As the narrative progresses, the government's desperation becomes palpable. High Chancellor Sutler, once a figure of absolute authority, starts to unravel as the situation spirals out of his control. He grows increasingly paranoid, realizing that V's actions have sown the seeds of doubt and rebellion among the people. The once ironclad grip of the Norse Fire regime begins to weaken as fear turns to anger and defiance among the populace. V, in his relentless pursuit of justice, continues to target individuals who played significant roles in the regime's rise to power and the horrors of Larkhill. Each of these figures represents a different aspect of the regime's corruption and brutality. V's methods are precise and symbolic, designed not only to exact vengeance, but also to expose the moral decay at the heart of the government. By eliminating these figures, Vi dismantles the regime's power structure piece by piece. As V's campaign progresses, he begins to reveal more about the true nature of the government's rise to power. He uncovers the conspiracy behind the regime's manipulation of a bioweapon, which was used to create a national crisis. This crisis, in turn, allowed the Norse Fire Party to seize control under the guise of protecting the public. The government's ruthless exploitation of fear to consolidate power becomes clear, and the public's trust in the regime erodes even further. Evie, having undergone her transformation, continues to grapple with the complexities of V's mission. She has come to see the necessity of challenging the regime, but she still struggles with the violent means by which V seeks to achieve his goals. Her internal conflict reflects the broader moral questions posed by the story. Is violence justified in the pursuit of freedom? Can true change be achieved without bloodshed? V and Evie's relationship, marked by mutual respect and growing affection, deepens as they navigate these challenges together. V's influence on Evie is profound, and she begins to embrace the idea that the people have the power to resist and overthrow their oppressors. At the same time, V's interactions with Evie reveal his own vulnerabilities, showing that beneath the mask lies a man who has suffered deeply and who is driven not just by ideology, but by personal pain and loss. As the November 5th deadline approaches, the tension in the city escalates. V's influence has spread far and wide, and his message of resistance has resonated with the masses. The citizens of London, once passive and fearful, begin to prepare for the coming confrontation. Acts of defiance become more common, and the government's efforts to suppress dissent grow increasingly futile. The government, desperate to maintain its hold on power, resorts to extreme measures. High Chancellor Sutler and his right-hand man, Creedy, become more isolated as their inner circle shrinks. The regime's brutality intensifies, with public executions and mass arrests becoming more frequent as they try to instill fear in the population. But instead of quelling the unrest, these actions only serve to fuel the growing rebellion. Throughout this period, V continues to inspire the people through a combination of symbolic acts and direct action. He understands that the power of his movement lies not just in the destruction of physical structures, but in the destruction of the fear that has kept the people subjugated. V's greatest weapon is not his skill with a blade, but his ability to instill hope and courage in those who have long been downtrodden. As the film moves toward its inevitable climax, the stage is set for a final confrontation between the forces of tyranny and the desire for freedom. The citizens of London, empowered by V's message and driven by their own desire for liberation, stand on the brink of revolution. The government's facade of control is crumbling, and the people are ready to rise up and take back their city. Evie, now fully committed to the cause, stands beside V as the final pieces of his plan fall into place. She has become a symbol of the transformation that V sought to inspire, a person who has overcome fear and found the strength to stand up against oppression. Evie's journey from a frightened, passive citizen to an empowered, active participant in the fight for freedom is one of the film's most compelling arcs. The narrative leaves us on the cusp of a decisive moment, where the future of the nation hangs in the balance. The people, awakened and emboldened, are ready to challenge the regime. V's actions have set the stage for a new beginning, where the citizens have the opportunity to reclaim their rights and build a society based on justice and liberty.